Allow me to cut through those
Okay, I
words.
feel like that's not where I should slice it.
No, there's no doubt Nagito's mouth was covered with duct tape before he was beat up.
What did you say?
Who cares about the duct tape? You might as well settle this with rock, paper, scissors.
It matters if he was tortured or just
We don't need to play a game.
hurt for fun.
It's clear the duct tape was on his mouth before the torture even began.
Why do you always side with Hajime? Do you have a crush on him or something?
You were with us when I peeled the duct tape off Nagito's mouth, right? The blood on Nagito's face wasn't under the duct tape, remember?
The blood on his face came from his arm wounds,
And it is on top of it.
which means the duct tape was on his face before his arms were even wounded.
And the duct tape had a lot of crinkles around his mouth. He must have been struggling to open his mouth under the duct tape.
Yep.
Perhaps the duct tape was used so he wouldn't be able to scream. Then it's like I said at the beginning. The tape wasn't for torture. It was to keep his mouth shut.
I mean, weren't you on that first suggested torture?
However, if they wanted to seal his mouth, they did not need to hurt him with such ferocity.
They probably had a deep grudge against Nagito.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone really.
Then,
Hello,
are you
thank
saying
you.
the killer was trying to make him suffer?
I'll try.
If so, it's friggin' crazy. Did they go psycho or something?
It was pretty crazy.
No, they didn't just go crazy. Whoever did this must be one crafty bastard. If not, they wouldn't have taken the time to set fire to the crime scene and destroy all the evidence.
There was still quite a bit of evidence.
The warehouse fire was for destroying evidence?
We can't think of any other reason.
But who could have done that? When the fire occurred, everyone in this room was gathered in front of the warehouse.
That's true. But the oil lighter seemed like it was left on. Probably.
Yeah. And right after I opened the warehouse door, the flames started burning from the very back.
Which means, it is plausible to think that nobody here set the fire.
I mean,
The killer isn't one of us. But that's not the case, huh? I mean, it's wishful thinking.
I think it's possible that Nagito set the fire, but I don't think Nagito tortured himself.
Even if it was only a coincidence, the timing was just too perfect.
Based on the pattern up until now, we should suspect that some kind of setup was used for this.
Yeah, the killer definitely had to set it up somehow.
Some kind of setup? Like what?
I do not know that, but that has been the pattern before.
That's our Miss Sonia. You have such an amazingly high intellect. Alrighty then. Let's think about this based on what Miss Sonia thinks. Is that okay, Miss Sonia?
I don't know. She doesn't seem to like you usually.
Damn right it is!
Need to clear that up first. Torture, burned rope, survival knife, duct tape, monocular panels. And it's either the oil later or the burned rope. But I think
The direct cause of the fire was the oil lighter found at the crime scene, right?
That's what it seemed like.
The killer used some kind of setup. He lit the curtain on fire with the lighter.
Some kind of setup?
Did they use the oil as an improvised fuse?
They probably just threw the lighter.
Based on the shape of that oil lighter, it can stand upright while the flame is lit.
If they tipped over the lighter in some way, it could have ignited the curtain.
What?
Some way?
Maybe they used invisible thread.
There should have been a way to tip it over with sound waves.
Or perhaps opening the door caused intense wind pressure to tip over the lighter.
Sound waves.
The direct cause of the fire was the oil lighter found at the crime scene, right?
The killer used some kind of setup. He lit the curtain on fire with the lighter.
Some kind of setup?
Did they use the oil as an improvised fuse?
Maybe no. Huh. Improvised fuse.
Crap!
Okay, what all do I have access to?
The direct cause of the
Torture
fire was
wounds, oil lighter, Monokuma panels,
the oil lighter
Monokuma
found at the
plushie,
crime scene, right?
duct tape, survival.
The killer used some kind of setup. He lit the curtain on fire with the lighter.
Some kind of setup?
Did they use the oil as an improvised fuse?
They probably just threw the lighter.
What's the oil later say exactly?
Based on the shape of that oil lighter, it can stand upright while the flame is lit.
If they tipped over the lighter in some way, it could have ignited the curtain.
Some way?
Ignited the curtain.
Maybe they used invisible thread.
I don't think so.
There should have been a way to tip it over with sound waves.
Or perhaps opening the door caused intense wind pressure to tip over the lighter.
Monokuma panels for opening the door.
The direct cause of the fire was the oil lighter found at the crime scene, right?
The killer used some kind of setup. He lit the curtain on fire with the...
Some kind of setup?
Did they use the oil like...
They probably just threw it based on the shape of that.
It can stand upright while
If they tipped over the lighter in some... It could have ignited the curtain.
Some way?
Maybe they used invisible.
There should have been a way to tip it over with sound...
or perhaps opening the door caused.
I agree with that. I also agree that opening the door is what started the fire.
The Monokuma panels flying all the way across the room.
Just as I thought, it was the wind pressure. A dust devil blown here from glorious Japan!
Totally.
No, not wind pressure. They probably used the Monokuma panels. A huge number of tipped-over Monokuma panels were found at the crime scene, right?
Indeed.
It looked like they were scattered everywhere, but some were laying on top of each other in a single line. Just a single line leading from the warehouse door to the fire's origin.
Does that mean anything?
The
killer probably arranged those Monokuma panels to create a domino effect.
A domino effect. You mean those tiles kids play with by lining them up and tipping them over?
Yep.
In place of those tiles, the killer used the Monokuma panels. So when we opened the warehouse door, the first panel toppled into the second. And from there, they fell like dominoes until they reached the lighter at the end.
Yep.
But wouldn't it be obvious that those big panels were falling over?
That's probably why they turned off the lights in the warehouse, so we wouldn't notice them.
Huh.
So the reason the warehouse was dark was to hide the domino effect.
And one more thing. There was something else the killer did to hide the domino effect, right?
They like blocked the door so it had to be pushed. Oh. To hide the domino effect. Oh.
I see! You're talking about the MP3 player, right? That hymn blaring throughout the warehouse masked the sound of the falling panels.
Huh. That wouldn't surprise me. So did a carne
That's
here?
it. So the strange sound was actually the sound of the panels falling.
Huh.
But those sounds weren't the only strange thing, right?
Why does Akane have such good hearing anyway?
Looking back on it, it was also strange when we opened the door to the warehouse.
Huh. And clatter, clatter, clatter. Alright, another trap. Just gonna take a little more force.
Ah, so the door was being blocked by a Monokuma panel.
Was it?
And when we opened the door, the domino effect started, and the falling panels eventually reached the lighter.
Those ones that sturdy?
Yeah, and that's how the warehouse caught on fire. At least, that's how it looks.
You don't look so sure.
At the time, Akane mentioned that she could barely open the door.
Because the panel was blocking it, right?
Yeah.
But the blocked doorway, there wasn't enough space for a person to fit through, right?
That's a good point.
Is that a problem?
It's a major problem. I mean, that door was the only entrance to the warehouse.
Huh. Locked room.
I see!
But all 5 of us were outside,
If
or all
the
6
panel
of
was
us.
so close to the door that it could barely be opened, the killer inside the warehouse wouldn't be able to leave, right?
Now that you mention it.
Does that mean they were hiding inside?
Who? We were all outside the warehouse, you know.
Uh-huh.
Based on the patterns up until now, I believe some kind of setup was used.
You don't have to think so hard. There's actually only one person who could have possibly done this.
Nagito.
You don't mean...
Hajime? What do you mean?
Huh. Did I pass him? I must be blind. Kyoko, Gundam, Akane, Fuyuhiko, Ibuki, Nagito. Oh, I passed him twice.
This is my answer! What if it was Nagito?
Why'd you bring him up? He's the victim, you know.
He's the only one that could have set it up?
He wasn't just the victim. Maybe.
Huh?
Not just the victim? What does that mean?
He was the victim, and he was the perpetrator too. Maybe.
Huh.
Are you saying this was a suicide? Don't be stupid. His body was covered in torture wounds. Or did you already forget? Are you saying those were all self-inflicted?
Huh. Nagito's pretty crazy.
But Nagito might do something like that, don't you think?
Uh-huh.
That's not the issue. He was tied up, remember? Even for a creep like Nagito, it'd be impossible for him to tie up his own arms and legs.
I mean, all but one of them, maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, as long as you understand.
Which one of them had a burned rope?
It seems we need to discuss how Nagito was able to tie himself up.
Burned rope.
Need to discuss? That's not necessary at all. No matter how much you think about it, it's clearly impossible.
Huh. The burned rope. Burned rope.
To actually tie up your own arms and legs. That's obviously impossible!
Tying just the legs is one thing, but Tying both arms would be impossible.
You couldn't do much with the free arm.
It'd be impossible if you were by yourself.
How about if you use your teeth? Or if you use your front tail?
What?
Dirty joke! Is that a dirty joke?
To actually tie up, that's obviously
Tying just the legs is one. Tying both arms would be
You couldn't do much with the free arm.
It'd be impossible if you were by yourself.
What?
Crap!
To actually tie up your own arms and...
Oh, it's
No,
because he
that's
didn't
wrong.
actually tie up all of his arms and legs.
Hold on a sec. Isn't that premise flawed?
What? I mean, it's no mistake that his arms and legs were...
Were they?
No, it shouldn't have been both of his arms. The rope on his right arm was completely burnt up. Based on that, you can't say he was tied up.
That was just burned by the fire. He should have been tied up before then.
It burned because of the fire. Like you said, it might look like that. But that was part of the trap. There's concrete evidence that proves it.
Is there? Duct tape. His right sleeve? Knife in his right hand. Not sure.
Crap!
This? The duct tape, his right sleeve. I mean, this makes no
see.
sense, but I'm not sure what his right sleeve.
Take a close look at his right sleeve. Even though the rope was burnt up, his sleeve wasn't burned at all.
Oh,
Wouldn't you agree?
okay.
A burn like this, no matter how you think about it, is unnatural. That rope was burned in advance so it would look like it was burned in the fire.
Huh.
Then Nagito's right arm wasn't tied up, right? He was able to move it freely, right?
Yeah, that should be the case.
But then how do you get the knife into it?
Hajime, that's awesome! I'll let you cop a feel if you want.
The Akane is so weird.
Akane, you should not give it away for free. Make sure they pay you first.
Okay then, Sanya.
That's definitely wrong.
Fine. I just gotta get a Benjamin from him before I let him touch me, right?
That's not what I meant. I'm talking about Nagito. I mean, even if his right hand wasn't tied up, the knife was still stabbed into it, you know?
That's a good point.
It's impossible to stab a knife into your right hand with your right hand. Ah, that much is obvious.
Hajime, you tricked me! Give me back that Benjamin!
You know,
Hold on. There should be a way.
Then hurry up and spill it.
If it's something lame, I'll make you give back the Benjamin with 10,000% interest.
hold on. Is this Hangman? No. Green ropes, rail knife, Monokuma plushie, blood on girder. Monokuma panels, oil lighter.
Even if Nagito's
Okay,
right hand was
let's
free,
listen to this all first.
how could he stab his right hand with his right hand?
If he threw the knife into the air and let the knife fall, could he stab his hand that way?
Is he a throwing knife expert?
Maybe he propped the knife somehow?
think
And
that's
slammed
it.
his right hand down on it?
Propped it onto what?
If he just propped the knife, he could have used his bound left hand.
If you're tied up, your arms won't bend that easily. We don't know if his left hand could even reach his right hand.
Only just right there and stand still. Then how did he do it?
Even if Nagito's right hand was free, how could he stab his right hand with his right hand?
If he threw the knife into the air and let the knife fall, could he stab his hand that way?
Is he a throwing knife expert?
Maybe he propped the knife somehow?
No.
It's wrong?
Even if Nagito's right hand was free, how could he stab his right hand with his right hand?
If he threw the knife into the air and let the knife fall, could he stab his hand that way?
I don't think so.
Is he a throwing knife expert?
What's the survival knife say exactly? Survival knife that was stabbed in Nagito's right hand. The knife is from the military base. It's safe to assume the wounds in Nagito's legs and arms were caused by this knife.
And slammed his right hand down on it?
Propped it onto what?
If he just propped the knife, he could have used his bound left hand.
Just his brown
If you're
left
tied
hand.
up, your arms won't bend that easily. We don't know if his left hand could even reach his right hand.
Won't bend that easily. Okay, I'm gonna try to shoot Monokuma
Even if
plushie at it,
Nagito's
and then
right
if
hand
not,
was
I'll do
free.
brown left hand.
How could he stab his right hand with his right hand?
If he threw the knife into the air and let the knife fall, could he stab his hand that way?
Is he a throwing knife expert?
Maybe he propped the knife somehow?
I agree with that.
Okay, what's the Monokuma plushie? Thought it might have been.
The life-size Monokuma plushie. He must have used that to prop the knife.
Makes sense. That's why there was a big hole in the plushie's stomach.
Oh. And that's why there's blood on it. That
He inserted the knife handle into that hole to prop it up. Then he slammed his hand onto it.
I was thinking that hole was from the spear, but I guess that was flawed.
If that's it, he had to place the plushie near him. And it also explains the mysterious blood on the plushie.
So the blood on the plushie came from Nagito after he stabbed the knife into his own right hand.
Nagato, you're crazy.
I see. So that's the trick.
Well, this has been way too quick.
For a
There's more
moment,
to
I
this,
seriously
obviously.
thought Monokuma died or something.
A bleeding plushie is super scary. It's got the same fear factor as a doll whose hair grows too long.
Okay then.
After stabbing his hand, he no longer needed the plushie, so he cast it off toward the fire's origin point.
He probably thought the fire would incinerate it and destroy the evidence.
So what do you think now, Fuyuhiko?
I get what you're saying about the wound on his right hand, but there's still one huge problem.
What is it?
The spear. Basically, you're saying Nagito committed suicide by impaling himself with a spear, right?
Theoretically.
If you think about the order, getting killed by the spear should have been the last thing to happen to Nagito.
I mean, we don't know the spear actually killed him, technically.
If that's true, how is that possible? He can't grab a spear with his right hand if a knife is stabbed into it and his left hand was all tied up.
Because it was
Then
propped.
he probably took the spear first, and as he endured the pain, he stabbed the knife into his right hand.
There is a limit to his constitution.
Are we sure?
If you got penetrated by something so big and thick, you would die instantly.
Well then. Katsuichi.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all that.
Like I said, if you got penetrated by something so big and thick, you would die instantly.
Say it one more time. I need you recorded.
Hey, bastard, you better cut it out!
True.
Like she said, in that condition, it's very difficult to stab yourself with a spear.
Uh-huh.
It'd be hard to use a spear with a knife stab into your right hand, while your left hand is tied up.
I don't know why there's blood on the
So you're
string,
saying
though.
it's impossible?
I don't think so.
But no matter what I think, I can't believe Nagito's death was caused by someone else.
Huh.
I also agree with that. To think that one of us could kill someone with such cruelty, I could never believe that.
Yeah, I don't think any of us would.
You say you can't believe it? You just don't want to believe it, right?
I'm not sure. I mean, this Nagito line seems decently likely, but it seems like it's going too quick. The biggest thing that sticks out to me is Sonia was not there immediately when we were all looking at the fireworks.
That's why you keep getting betrayed over and over again, right? Same goes for this time,
But
too.
Nagito might have been collaborating with the person? I don't know.
You just shut your mouth! It's against the rules to interfere with everyone! If you even think about doing anything, I have a plan of my own!
You do? Huh.
Monami sassing me!
But it's just as Monokuma said. We've been betrayed over and over again so far, so... This might also be the same. Calling this a suicide takes too much for granted, and it's too convenient.
Huh.
Then are you saying there is a killer among us, Kazuichi?
I mean, it feels like it could be a suicide, but I'm not so sure.
Of course that doesn't include Miss Sonia and me.
As Kazuichi said, it's true we've been constantly betrayed.
I mean, that's just the thing of the killing game.
But even if I'm betrayed again, I still want to believe in everyone.
Yep.
No matter how many times I may be betrayed, I still want to believe in everyone.
I don't want to believe that anyone killed someone. That's a good point, Chiaki.
I also want to believe that there's no killer, but suicide is unimaginable.
You know, I've been imagining it pretty well so far.
Do you really think so?
But you said it too. It'd be impossible for him to stab himself with a spear in his condition.
I mean, I think he could very well do it, but I'm just not sure about the blood on the spear.
I did say difficult, but I never said impossible.
On the spear string.
I feel that there's some way he could have stabbed himself with that spear.
Yeah, the blood on the girder.
What kind of way?
I don't know.
I do.
You don't know.
It's impossible to figure out by myself. So let's think about it together.
I don't know how it would have untied itself from the girder.
That's how. We made it this far up till now.
Everyone, working together.
Feels good, man. Yes, and everyone in here was not a killer and helped us get through it.
All right, let's do this.
Okay, we're doing bullet time? No. Why do I keep calling this bullet time? Burn drill, turtle knife, blood on girder. Oh wait, no. Blood on left hand? So blood on girder isn't here. Torture wounds, oil lighter, non-killing fleshy, duct tape, blood on left. Not sure what the blood on left hand is. What was that again? Oh yeah, it's because he was clenched, right? Yeah. The blood was splattered on the palm of Mugito's left hand for some reason. The splatter cuts off in the middle of his palm, so the back of his left hand has an unnatural blood stain that's only above the nail points of his fingers. AKA, he had his fist clenched.
Let's work together and think this through.
When the spear stabbed Nagito, his right hand was covered by the knife, right?
He was only able to move his left hand.
But his left hand was also tied up.
Then that rules out his left hand. If that's the case, the only other way is...
He used his teeth? Or maybe he used his front tail?
Really?
I know guys have tails that get hard when they're grabbed.
What are you saying?
A blushing Miss Sonia is freaking awesome!
Okay then.
How did Nagito stab himself with a spear? Let's work together and think this through.
When the spear stabbed Nagito, his right hand was covered by the knife, right?
He was only able to move his left hand.
But his left hand was also tied up.
Then that rules out his left hand.
No, that's wrong.
Left hand is very strange.
Hold on. It's still too early to dismiss the possibility that he used his left hand.
Why? I mean, his left hand was tied up, you know?
Yeah, it was.
But there was something off about his left hand.
It was like
The bloodstain on the palm of his hand. Don't you think it looked somewhat strange? He only had blood on the lower area of his palm. Beyond that point, the bloodstain suddenly cuts off, right?
And on the back of his hand, as though his fist was clenched.
When the blood splattered, that's as far as it reached, right?
That settles the description of that bloodstain, but it's not the only unnatural bloodstain. Look, there's blood on the back of his hand, around the middle joints of his fingers.
Like you said, it looks like an unnatural bloodstain, but what's wrong with that?
We might need to think and use our imaginations for a bit. If there's blood on his palm and the back of his hand, what was his left hand doing as the blood splattered?
Clenching. Hiding, gripping, open, back of his hand.
I see!